Well, let's now get some legal perspective on some of the issues in the aftermath of the 2019 general elections and the huge legal tussle which is following. Mr. Evans Ufeli, a legal practitioner, joins us for more on the issues. Many thanks for joining us on the program.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
All right. So, I mean, it appears INEC is faced with loads of legal issues. Is there a way to forestall this? And one question people are also asking is, this appears to be one of the maybe most petitions that we've received in our history of general elections in Nigeria. Do you think so?
Like the most litigated election in the history of Nigeria. Well, there's truth in that, because if you look at the entire political structure and climate, you find out that the election was not as solid as it should have been, meaning that it is an election that had a lot of hitches, a lot of violence, and this violence counts for grievances, and these grievances can only be resolved in the courts. That's one of the factors. Another factor is that now you have more political party, you have more participants, okay? You even have more electors in the process. So there is really an expansion, an explosion of the level of substantial non-compliance with the Electoral Act by virtue of the fact that INEC had no proper grip of the process. The process, you know, that chunked out the result for which grievances followed. Okay, and then you have the factor that people also have more people in the process, and you have a system
more political parties.
So it is evident, it is clear that it is actually the most litigated. We have a lot of cases, a lot of petition in court as a result of this. And
unfortunately, INEC has also been dragged in most of the cases.
Of course, in all the cases, INEC must be party because they are the umpire. Okay, whatever a result they pronounce, whatever grievances that is coming as a result of that, INEC must be at the center of that political polemics for which parties and grievances and the resolution is supposed to end in court.
It's also interesting to note that some of the lawyers have been divided over what some would call the technicalities coming from the Petitions Tribunal, and others are looking at, do you think justice will be met with regards to the time that they have before inauguration?
Well, if you look at it, the question of timing cannot be. The Supreme Court have ruled, okay, in Mechi versus Celestino Meyer, the Supreme Court have ruled that it's 180 days, and that 180 days cannot be elongated, it cannot be moved. In fact, the Supreme Court said it is like the rock of Gibraltar or Mount Zion that cannot be moved. So after election, you have 21 days within to bring petition, okay? Then the court have, 180 days, and that 180 days is fixed by law. Okay, so I know that there are contentions here and there that perhaps that time is short, but as it stands now, that is the law. And that law must be obeyed.
But isn't that unfortunate? Justice might be slaughtered on the altar of speed, because, I mean, some people might decide to slow down the process if they technically have no case.
Well, the question of slowing down the process, there are measures, okay, for which courts can be slammed against them, for which if the court comes to that conclusion that perhaps a party is trying to frustrate the process, there are internal mechanisms and framework upon which such a litigant can be, disciplined in the process. You understand? So while we advocate that perhaps there must be an extension of that time, it is still the law. And then parties who know they have a case, must try as much as possible, even with their lawyer, their counsel, to stay within the time allowed by law for now. Because that is what we have. Because the reason we have the 180 days is to avoid what we've had in the past, where a wrongful candidate had been sworn in. He has spent 2 years before the rightful candidate comes up. So you find out that people in the past were reaping from their wrong, okay? People were benefiting from their wrong. People who were not supposed to be, if you look at the case of Edo State, Osumbo, and then, the other governor who came up, and then look at the history of that era where it is unlimited time. Whenever the court decides, that is when you now have to give judgment. So it is better we have a time limit so as to forestall that condition where a wrongful person who have no mandate whatsoever we have to lead the people for a very long time, almost 4 years, or sometimes almost 2 years before judgment is given, before the rightful person, is brought into the system.
Another issue is that of election violence. I mean, we have several groups saying that we must take this seriously and take these perpetrators to court and, you know, end that process to forestall or to ensure that there's peaceful elections going forward. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, all we need is to enforce the Electoral Act. Okay, if you look at Section 130 of the Electoral Act, talks about giving and collecting gratification. Look at spread over other sections, you talk about violence and then people snatching ballot boxes and all, and creating mayhem during election and electioneering. Okay, I think that what we need is a political will to enforce these laws. And if you look at the Electoral Act, there is a serious defect in the Electoral Act because the Electoral Act keeps talking about the electors, the people who collect bribe, the people who engage in violence. The Electoral Act is not expansive enough to look at those politicians who pay people. The Nigerians will not take ballot boxes on their own volition. They have been paid to do that. They have been given certain kind of mobilization to carry out such acts. So I think that we must expand the law to the frontiers of those who instigate the violence and not just who are the actors of the violence. And
when you say the law, the Electoral Act, that, you know, amended act that was not signed?
No, it has not been signed. I mean, even the innovations we have, the prime most innovations we have in the Electoral Act are those that have to do with the speed of collation and then electronic voting and then the card reader are technical areas for each free administrative process. Now, I'm saying that we should dig down the law into looking at how to enforce, you know, crime during election process. And then such crime should not just be enforced against the actors or those who are seen as the people on ground who committed the offense. We must extend it to those who employ them, those who instigate them, those who give them the paraphernalia for which they carry out this act of violence.
We just have a few seconds before we go on break. And let me quickly ask, Rivers, what lessons can we learn from the nature of Rivers, suspended elections, and now today they're receiving a certificate of return?
Well, the lessons we have learned from that is that we need to understand that our political process must be clean enough to guarantee good governance. Because what we have now in Rivers State is what we call complete political mayhem. The polemics of politics have been so distorted in that state that even the electors, even the person who has emerged with the mandate, is already worn out with a lot of opposition, violence, and then you are asked what is left of this person in terms of ideology, in terms of good governance. And then will this person who have suffered all this not spend the next 4 years trying to revenge or avenge? These are the psychologies, you know, of our practice, and I think that we must look at it critically. That is why I keep talking about the politicians who employ people to create mayhem. If you look at what happened in Rivers State, it is not the people of Rivers State that made that election to be suspended. It's not the people, in quote, the masses. It is the leaders, the elite of that state. Right. They are the constructors of the mayhem of that state. And that is why I think that the law must go against them first, then the masses. That is, we must, because we keep amending our laws to get the masses to behave the right way. But we don't amend our laws to tinker with the political actors.
I'd like to thank you. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you.